I do, Naimi. Chumash should have been.
Yes.
Ah, perfect.
For the Rabbi wants this one? Yeah, yeah.
Very good. Okay, Boker Or Rabotai, Erev Shabbat Kodesh, Parashat Yitro. We're here in Surfside, Florida, in our studios with Rabbi Elmaleh, Yarum Hodo. Today's shiur is
Hallelujah, Nishmat.
Ya'ilun Nishmat,
Yaakov ben Aisha.
Yaakov ben Aisha, Chaim ben Esther,
Abat Esther.
and Leah bat Esther. Ruach Hashem Tenichem Began Eden. Amen. So the time is short. We'll just make a few comments on the first pasuk in the parasha. Vayishma Yitro, Kohen Midyan, Choten Moshe. So the first pasuk in the parasha gives us a full identification of who Yitro was. He's Yitro, he's Kohen Midyan, he's Choten Moshe. So that's the full bio. Anything you need to know. It doesn't leave out any adjectives. If you still don't know who Yitro is after that, then you're never going to know who this man is. He's Yitro, Kohen Midyan, although I don't know why it says Kohen Midyan, poor guy. He already left Kohen Midyan a long time ago. As a matter of fact, we learned that when Moshe Rabbeinu came to Midyan, so it says he saw the daughters of Midyan, the daughters of Yitro by the well. And Hakamim asked, since when do you have girls doing shepherding work, doing manual labor, drawing water? That's a man's job. And the explanation is because Yitro denounced his connection to the archdiocese of Midian. He was the pope, and he left the papal responsibilities, and he denounced it. He said it's sheker v'chazab. So the church protested against Yitro, and they sent out notices. Nobody could work for Yitro, and therefore he couldn't hire anybody. So already we see at that point that Yitro already left the church. So now why would the pasuk over here come along and remind us Kohen Midyan? If anything, it should say Kohen Midyan emeritus, meaning the Sha'aban, Alav Shalom, Kohen Midyan. That's why I saw once beautiful explanation. There was a rabbi called Hechal Kabbalah. He says that when Moshe Rabbeinu came to the well, and the shepherds were harassing the daughters of Yitro, so the pasuk says by Garishum. So the shepherds kicked away the daughters by Garishum. They kicked away the daughters of Yitro. So the Ketab Kabbalah is a simple question. The daughters are female. The pasuk should say by Garishun with a nun, but it says by Garishum with a man, which is masculine. Why would the pasuk call the daughters of Yitro? This is before they had the gender politics over here. This is like in our generation. There's only two genders, like Trump said. So therefore, if they're females, why does it say Vaygarishum? They should say Vaygarishun. So Ketab Kabbalah says a big Hadusha. He says sometimes the pasuk will give us a remez to the reason why they were chased away. They were being chased away because of their father, and therefore Yitro is a zachar. So therefore, the mem comes and tells me we know they were females, they were daughters, but it was nothing that they did that they were getting harassed by the well. By Garishum, Al Shem, Al Shem Yitro. So anyway, the Torah, for whatever reason, reminds us that he's Kohen Midyan over here. Okay, we have to see why. Anyway, what did he hear? It says, Et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe Yisrael. So clearly we understand that he heard two things. He heard that what Hashem did to Moshe and what he did to Yisrael. I don't know what these things are. What did Hashem do to Moshe and what did he do to Israel? So I agreed with Rashi. Vayishma Yitro, ma shemu'a shama uba. What did Yitro hear that made him come to join Klal Yisrael? So she says two things. Kiriyat Yamsuf u'Milchemet Amalek. That's the whole shiur. Here are two things. He heard about Kiryat Yamsuf, and he also heard about Milchemet Amalek, the war of Amalek, which actually was the end of last week's Parashat. I have a simple question. He must have heard something by Yishma Yitro. Rashi comes along and says, I'll tell you what he heard. I'm not too sure how Rashi knows this, probably from a Midrash somewhere. But he says the first thing he heard is Kiryat Yamsuf. Okay, now I'm not surprised with that. The whole world heard about Kiryat Yamsuf. Shami'u Ammim Yirgazun. Hil Ahaz Yosheve Pelashit. Aznebalu Alufe Edom. Edem Wa'ab. יוחזמו נמוגו כל יושבי חנען, תיפול עליהם אימתה ופחד, בגדול זרוחי ידמו כאבן. So he actually heard what everybody else heard. And I'm not surprised that it should get Yitro excited. Kiryat Yamsuf is something amazing. According to one opinion, 50 miracles happened at Kiryat Yamsuf. According to another opinion, 250 miracles happened at Kiryat Yamsuf. According to the Mekubalim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu used every single name of the Shem Ayin Bet. There's a Shem Ab. It's made up of 216 letters. Each Shem is made up of 3 letters. And there's 72 of them. And therefore 72 times 3, 216. That's the Shem Ab, which is hinted in the 3 Pesukim in the beginning of Parashat Mishalah. That means normally to make a miracle, you take one of the Shemot and you make a miracle. He has Shem took all 72 Shemot simultaneously. So could you imagine what Kiryat Yamsuf was? So I'm not surprised that Kiryat Yamsuf is on the list of things that motivated Yitro to come. But what's Milchemet Amalek? What happened exactly at Milchemet Amalek? Milchemet Amalek, I must tell you, was anything exciting or awe-inspiring. As a matter of fact, we didn't win that war so easily. There was casualties. So if Yitro is getting motivated by the miraculous events, I got no problem. If anything, Milchemet Amalek should be a reason for him to be skeptical and say, I don't know, these people, as great as they are, you see, they're not impenetrable. Amalek came along and killed them. If anything, Milchemet Amalek should be a reason for Yitro maybe to hesitate. Why is it that Milchemet Amalek actually is something that is an impetus and causes Yitro to go forward? This is the question that we had. Again, today we only came to explain one Rashi in the Parashat, Kiryat Yamsuf u'Milchemet Amalek. So I'd like to say what we said in previous years, but this year I want to say a Chedush. I'll tell you what we said in previous years. We said the following. The Gemara says, Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Torah Tevalim. God says, I created the Yetzer Hara, and there's only one antidote to neutralize the Yetzer Hara. Hashem says, I created it, so I know exactly, sometimes when you have the Mossad, they poison one of their enemies. The only one that has the antidote against the poison is the Mossad themselves. They have to make the antidote before they make the poison, just in case it goes into the wrong hands or something. You have to know how to fix it. So Hashem says, I made the Yetzer Hara. I know exactly the antidote, and that is Torah. Nothing else. You can read all the poetry, do all the exercise. You can sing all the songs you want, go to Uman 3 times a year. The only item that's going to fight the Yetzer Hara is Torah. Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati lo Torah Tevalim. It's finished. So Yitro, listen, he's not Oved Avodah Zarah anymore. Okay, he's sitting in Midyan. What is he doing? He believes in one God. Is he learning Torah? Not learning Torah. There's no Torah. He's doing whatever. He's reading his philosophy books. He became a monotheist. That's about it. Now he hears that the Jewish people are going to receive the Torah. So the Torah is questioning, do I need the Torah? What do I need the Torah for? I believe in God. Anyway, I'm not Jewish. Therefore, he's questioning, should I join or not join? So he hears about Kiryat Yamsuf. Wow, the Jewish people on such a high level. What a level. It says a maidservant saw at Kiryat Yamsuf what Yehezkel, the prophet, would see later on in Ma'aseh Merkabah. What a level the Jewish people were on. Then he hears about Amalek. He says, how did they fall? It says the Jewish people got attacked by Amalek because they had a question in Emunah. They said, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbenu. Yitro says, what? After Kriyat Yam Suf, you could come along and say, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbenu? How's that possible? And they said, you see how big the Yetzer Hara is. You could go from Kriyat Yam Suf to Milchemet Amalek. He says, if that's the case, I cannot trust my own instincts to fight the Yetzer Hara. I need to come and join the Jewish people in order to receive the Torah. If the Jewish people could go from one extreme to the other, if they could go from Kriyat Yam Suf to Milchemet Amalek, Kriyat Yam Suf is Vayaminu b'Hashem. And what's Milchemet Amalek? Hayesh Hashem b'kirbenu. How can it be? On Monday, you have Vayaminu, and Tuesday, Hayesh Hashem? That shows you how strong the Yetzer Hara is. And therefore, without Torah, you'll never be able to control, you'll never be able to fight the Yetzer, because the human being has a lot of nisyonot. So therefore, when he heard the two polar opposites, these are two polar opposite events. They're two events that are on the opposite side of the religious spectrum. Kriyat Yam Suf represents the success of the Jewish people, and Milchemet Amalek represents the failure of the Jewish people. When he comes along and says, you could see a Kriyat Yam Suf and you could still be subject to a Milchemet Amalek. He saw that. He said, you know something? I have to join the Jewish people. It's not enough for me to sit back in Midian, and therefore he joined the Klal Yisrael. So that was what we said in previous years. I'm not retracting that interpretation about that. I think that interpretation is very good. The person shouldn't think that he can, fight the Yetzer Hara with his own doings. He actually needs the fire of the Torah in order to protect. Fine. But there was a great rabbi called Be'er Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Salant, and he says an unbelievable explanation, and he learned it from the Pesukim themselves. And I'm going to add to what he said. Yitro hears about Kriyat Yam Suf. By the way, where did he hear? They didn't have Fox News, but everyone was talking about it. You heard what happened to the Jewish people. They split the sea. According to some opinions, all the bodies of water in the world split. So Yitro's drinking his coffee in the morning on the 21st of Nisan. Also, he looks at his coffee. He sees Kiryat Cafe. He sees the coffee is splitting over here. So what kind of business over there? His wife is calling him from the swimming pool outside. Hey, Yitro! Yitro, Shu'aib! He comes outside Shu'aib. He sees the swimming pool, Kiryat swimming pool. He hears all the neighbors screaming. Every body of water is splitting. So they heard about it. But the question was, who split the sea? Moshe. No, the pasuk says Moshe Rabbeinu took a stick and he split the sea. So there was big questions amongst the Goyim. How did the sea split? Now we know the Egyptians were filled with magicians and magic and kishuv. So there was talk that, listen, this is a battle of who's the bigger mechashef. Moshe Rabbeinu was a bigger mechashef than the Egyptians. He has a magic stick. He comes along, he puts it on the water. So this is nothing to do with a religious event. This is black magic event. This is an event. So when you start hearing the event of Kriyat Yam Suf, it's questionable if this is an act of God, or maybe there's a super person called Moshe Rabbeinu and he has powers. And the Goyim in those days, they understood that people have powers like that. It wasn't uncommon. In Egypt, they were all Hartumim and these type of people. And even Bil'am, many years later, when the Midyanim come to hire Bil'am to curse the Jewish people, so what do they tell Bil'am? What does Bil'am say to the Jew, to the Midyanim? He says, these people, Moshe Rabbeinu, en koho ela bapeh. He has kohot. What's his kohot? He has kohot bapeh. Now, that doesn't he didn't say en koham ela b'Hashem. They gave Moshe Rabbeinu certain powers. So Yitro, when he hears about Kriyat Yam Suf, he's not so impressed. Why should that cause him to come to serve God? This is Moshe Rabbeinu. They have a man that has supernatural powers. So therefore, he was a little hesitant, and I'm explaining to you why he was hesitant. Yitro has been around the block. Yitro, it says, worshipped every single avodah zarah in the Rolodex, from A to Z. That's why in our Parashat says, Ata yada'ati ki gadol Hashem mikol ha'elohim. Now I know that God is the true God from all the gods. How do you know all the gods? He said, because I worship all the gods. That means Yitro, what probably happened? somebody would come to me and say, you have to do this religion. They're miraculous people and their leader did this. I heard stories. Nobody heard more stories about miracle workers and all types of, supernatural. This is the whole Yitro story, from going from one religion to another. So Yitro was a skeptic. Anytime he would hear, here's another guy. Now we're hearing Moshe. Okay, there's another guy coming along. This is added to the list of religions that I joined. Now we have another one. Now it's called the religion called the Musaism. So therefore, the pasuk is coming along to say Yitro heard about Kiryat Yamsuf, but you have to remember Yitro was Kohen Midyan, and since he was Kohen Midyan, he was skeptical because as Kohen Midyan, he heard every story about every religion, and then what ended up happening? It was shekhet. So therefore, he was let down so many times. So the pasuk is telling us specifically because he was Kohen Midyan, Kiryat Yamsuf is not enough. Then all of a sudden he hears about Amalek. Now he wants to get the details of this Milchemet Amalek. What's the details that he gets? Very interesting details. Moshe Rabbeinu was not fighting this war. Moshe Rabbeinu did not use his stick in this war. Moshe Rabbeinu was on a mountain far away from the war. And who fought the war? The Jewish people. Now, the Jewish people don't have any kochot. How did they beat Amalek? It's this amazing thing. Every time they turned their eyes to God, Begabar Israel. And anytime the Emunah became a little weak, already they became, the war went in the favor of Amalek. When Yitro heard the details of Amalek, he realized that this is nothing to do about a supernatural voodoo, black magic. This has to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Milchemet Amalek revealed to Yitro how Kiryat Yamsuf happened. When he saw that Milchemet Amalek was won, without Moshe and without the stick, that tells me that what was the main savior of the Jewish people? HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chmodo b'atzmo. So therefore, it was Milchemet Amalek that revealed to Yitro what really happened at Kiryat Yamsuf. Understand how we're learning? If it's just Kiryat Yamsuf alone, Yitro can say, it's Moshe, it's the stick. What proves to Yitro that Kiryat Yamsuf actually was an act of God? Milchemet Amalek. Because Milchemet Amalek, you don't have what you had by Kiryat Yamsuf. You don't have the stick, you don't have Moshe. And still what? The Jewish people won. What's their powers? The Jewish people are regular people. They're not, it's not the leader. Ella must be, it was their emunah. So like we say in Gemara, Bazeh v'limed al zeh. Kiryat Yamsuf alone would not be enough for Yitro to know exactly the source of where the miracle was. Ella, what did he need? He needed to find another event that was devoid of Moshe, that was devoid of the stick, of the mater, and still the Jewish people had a successful outcome. And what is that event called? Milchemet Amalek. So therefore, once he heard about Milchemet Amalek, he went back to Kiryat Yamsuf and he said, now that must be also was an act of God. Until I see Milchemet Amalek that doesn't have the same ingredients as Kiryat Yamsuf, I don't know where Kiryat Yamsuf came from. Once I see already Milchemet Amalek, it was only the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu is not there and the Mateh is not there. And they still were victorious. Where'd that come from? It must be as a nes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the Emunah. Now I understand where the Kiryat Yamsuf came from. It must be from the same place. Which without Milchemet Amalek, Kiryat Yamsuf would not have been enough. Now let's read the Pesukim. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midyan. It tells us he's Kohen Midyan, so he's a skeptic. Now, Et kol asher asa Elohim, what God did, Elohim is Midat Hadin, LeMoshe ul Yisrael. Moshe is Kiryat Yamsuf. Yisrael is Milchemet Amalek. That's why the pasuk says. So he says, he heard everything happened to Moshe, but it's Moshe. It's not God. Moshe Rabbeinu did it. But then he heard, well, Yisrael. Now there, I can't give the credit to Moshe because he wasn't there. Once he heard what happened to Moshe at Kiryat Yamsuf, Ul Yisrael Amot Milchemet Amalek, you know what his conclusion was? Ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael me Mitzrayim. That it must have been God that took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. Understand what it means in pasuk? It's a combination. When Moshe Rabbeinu heard it, Asher Asalim leMoshe od Yisrael, Mazid Moshe Yisrael, Moshe ze Kiryat Yamsuf, od Yisrael Amo ze Milchemet Amalek. What was his conclusion? Hazak ki hotzi Adonai Yisrael me Mitzrayim. Now that I see both these events, now I am convinced that it is Hashem that took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. And therefore, we cannot give the credit to some, magician or some, miracle worker or something like that. This is not like all those religions from my Kohen Midyan days that I got, all the Baba Meisim, like they say, all the grandmother stories that I've heard all my life. This is not the case. He needed a Melchemet Amalek in order to give him belief or to give him confidence that the Kiryat Yamsuf was a legitimate Kiryat Yamsuf mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu and not mitzad some some religious a scam artist that comes along and fools the people with tricks and optical illusions and stuff like that. They want them the way he learned it. This is an elegant derash. Go slow. Before you say what you know, what you didn't know. That's okay. So that's the pasuk works out good. However, Rabbi, I would like to say a third interpretation. Now, my contract does not obligate me only to explain Rashi one way, but I'm a generous guy, and I'm even on vacation now. So one derash suffices. But as you know, Victor, I'm a generous guy. I don't work 9 to 5. I like to give the congregation more than they deserve. So therefore, I'm going to give you now the third interpretation of Perush Rashi. Let's review. The first interpretation was what? He heard about Kiryat Yamsuf, that the Jewish people are on such a high level. And then he hears the next day they're in the Amalek. He says, oh, without Torah, you could go from Kiryat Yamsuf to I better go join the Torah with the Jewish people, because that's the only thing that can control a person from the Yetzer Hara. Second interpretation, Kiryat Yamsuf, big deal. Add it to the stories of these religious evangelists. The guy comes on Sunday morning. I can walk. I can see. I know the story. The guy give me money, and he does all sorts of type of miracle workers, fakers. So what he saw that Moshe had nothing to do with Melchemet Amalek. Now I see between Masha Aseh Hashem le Moshe on Yisrael. What is Moshe plus Yisrael equal? The conclusion must be it was Hashem and that took the people out of Mitzrayim. But the third interpretation to me is the most beautiful interpretation. I'd like to ask you a simple question. Do we have a Gemara Berachot Rabbeinu? Okay, we have a ladder.
No. Or right in front. There are ones that are article of
That's it. Rabbi has to know how to learn from the real Gemara, not Look at this Gemara in Berachot Daf Yud Zayin. It's fantastic Gemara. The Gemara comes along and says there was certain group of people. The Gemara comes along and refers to them as Abirei Lev. Abirei Lev means their heart was fat. Was that a medical condition? I mean, sometimes you say a guy, he's thick. Thick means his brain is thick. He doesn't enter. So when a person is religiously thick, they say he has Abir Lev. His heart doesn't allow any inspiration to enter. So the Gemara says, Shim'u elai Abirei Lev. Har-Hukim mistakah. Who is Abirei Lev? So the Gemara comes along and says, Amar, Frigad Rabbi Yehuda, Damar Rabbi Yehuda, Man Abirei Lev. Who is this Abirei Lev? Goba'e Tipsha'e. These people from Gobai, not Dubai, Gubai. Guba'e Tipsha'e. What are they? The Tipshim from Gubai. Amar Rabbi Yosef, why are they Tipshim? Nobody ever converted to Judaism from Gubai. Why should they convert? Oh, by the way, that's not such a claim against them. So he says, no. Amar Rabbi Yosef Teda. He says, Amar Rabbi Yosef, Benem Matam Mahsiyah. The people from Matam Mahsiyah. Now, this is a city where Jewish people lived. Gubai, leave Gubai. Matam Mahsiyah was in Bavel. And there was a big Jewish community. And the Goyim lived with them. and never anybody from Matam Baksaya converted. They saw the glory of Torah. They saw the glory of God 2 times a year. And nobody ever converted. What did they see? So Tosafot comes along and says that what happened. וראיתי בספר העיתים שחיבר הרב רבי יהודה בר ברזילי ששמע שהיה עמוד של אש יורד מן השמיים עליהם בחלה דאלול וחלה דאדר. They used to have yeshiva in Adar and in Elul. And who used to come to the yeshiva? All the Baalei Batim. They would take off for work, like Hechal. They would learn for a month before Rosh Hashanah and before Pesach. And during the time that the yeshiva in Matam Mahsaya had all these rabbis learning and the businessmen learning, there was a fire that was coming out of the roof of the yeshiva. Or on top of the yeshiva, there was a pillar of fire. That means you walk down the street, you look up, you see a pillar of fire. You call the fire department. They say, no, this has nothing to do. This is not a dangerous fire. We never saw such a thing. Like it's a phenomenon. Today we would call it a UFO. They would see this pillar of fire on the yeshiva 2 months a year. And the Gemara says, nobody questioned what it was. Nobody said, where's this coming from? And the Gemara says, Abirei Lev. Nobody converted. It's because of a question. What are they doing in this building that causes a fire to come out? It didn't bother them. They didn't get inspired by it. They went on their merry way and they remained goyim. So the Gemara says, you see the glory of God 2 times a year. Velo igayer had minayu, and not one of the people converted. Abirei Lev. These people are stout-hearted. When I saw this Gemara, I said, you don't have to go to Matam Mahsaya. Look what happened when the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim. Shami'u amim yirgazun. They all heard what happened. Chil ahad josh bepelashet. As the balu alufe edom. The whole world heard about it. Okay, and who came to convert? One guy. Vayishma Yitro. What do you mean Yitro? It should say Yitro and 3.5 million people. There should have been a ticker tape parade with Yitro and 3.5 million people coming to convert. I mean, you heard about the event. You heard about Kiryat Yamsuf. Since B'riyat Ta'olam, there was never an event like this. And then the question becomes, how is it possible that not one, I think that's the she's question, Ma Shemu'a Shama Uba. But we know the Erev Rav, eventually they went back to their old ways. But they were in Egypt. Fine. But the Erev Rav, I accept. Erev Rav, they were in Egypt. So they were local guys. But where's everybody else from the rest of the world? Where's everybody else? Yitro's the only guy outside of Erev Rav in Mitzrayim who were there when they witnessed it. Nobody. Give me, by the way, tell me Yitro +1. There's not even a +1. So, by the way, I used to learn the Rashi like this when she's asking, Ma Shemu'a Shama Uba. I think the main word in Rashi is Uba. What did Yitro hear that caused him to come? That she's asking, he must have heard something else. Because everybody heard Kiryat Yamsuf and nobody showed up there. She says, guess what? He heard the same thing. Which means he didn't hear anything different than everybody else heard. So now the question is really, where was everybody? You know you can give the credit to? You know you can give the credit to why nobody showed up? Amalek. Amalek came along. The world was on fire. Everybody was motivated, inspired. They were all excited. And I have no doubt there were lines of people filing for conversion until Amalek came. The Gemara says that when Amalek came, Asher karecha baderech. What does karecha mean? Melashon kar. He called the Jewish people off. All of a sudden, before Amalek came, everybody said, wow, the Jewish people, they're untouchable. The Jewish people are the real nation. There's a miraculous people. All of a sudden, Amalek said, what are you talking? They're like everybody else. And he jumped into the fire, Amalek, and he called the Jewish people off. And all it takes is a litz. It takes a little, somebody to ridicule and to make fun and to be a scoffer. And all of a sudden, you ruin the whole moment of inspiration. So it was Amalek that actually was the one that deterred thousands of people. Amalek basically is trying to say, They're not so special. What are you getting excited about? I'll fight them. And then in the newspaper it said, yes, Amalek was able to kill some Jews. So you can kill these people? We thought that they toppled the empire of the Egyptians. We thought that that's it. There's not. Obviously, the Jewish people are overrated. It's not what we thought. Amalek succeeded in order to erase the inspiration that took place at the time of Kiryat Yamsuf. I once saw an explanation. That's why God said, Midah keneged midah. You erased the inspiration, therefore your name will be erased. Machotim chayet et zecher Amalek. Midah keneged midah. The one that tried to erase the event that happened to the Jewish people, and therefore you're the one that caused so many potential converts to come to the Jewish people, therefore you'll be erased and you will be destroyed. Yitro heard this. Yitro was so upset. Yitro says, you have Kiryat Yamsuf, and look what these people, Milchemet Amalek, what a Hilul Hashem they made, Milchemet Amalek. So what happens? Very strange midrash. Yitro comes to Moshe. The pasuk says, "Vayikach Yitro choten Moshe tzipora." He takes tzipora, ve'et shnei banea, and the two children, and then the pasuk says, "Vayavo Yitro choten Moshe ubanav el Moshe." So it says he comes to Moshe and he sends a message to Moshe. He says, "Moshe, come out for my sake to greet me, and if you don't come out for my sake, come out for the sake of your wife." And if you don't come out for the sake of your wife, come for the sake of your children. And all of a sudden, Moshe Rabbeinu comes out and says, when Moshe Rabbeinu came out, they're not going to let him go alone, the Jewish people. Not dedicated to let Moshe Rabbeinu. So it says all the Jewish people came out to greet Moshe. I asked a simple question. What, Yitro wants kavod? Come out for my sake. Come out. Go join the people. Who's bigger, you or Moshe? Moshe is bigger. So Derech Eretz, go to Moshe Rabbeinu, knock on his tent. I'm here. No, Yitro stands away. Go send a message. Tell him to come greet me for my honor. It's a typical father-in-law. And then he comes along and he says, "Not for my honor. Come for the honor of your wife." Yitro, you're coming for kavod or you're coming to convert l'shem shamayim? It sounds like over here that Yitro, until the whole nation came out, as the pasuk says, "Vayomer el Moshe." He makes Moshe come at him. Who's supposed to greet who? Yitro, Moshe, or Moshe, Yitro? Strange behavior of Yitro. Explanation is based on what I saw in the Zohar Kadosh in this week's Parashat. What was Yitro's kavanah? Yitro saw that the Jewish people just experienced the greatest Hilul Hashem, which means they were on top. All the nations of the world were giving them all the honor, and all of a sudden Amalek came and he spoiled the whole thing. So Yitro came along. Yitro is an intellectual guy. He's a rich man. He's a very famous man. He used to work for Paro. He was one of the advisors, like the Gemara says in Sotah on Yud Aleph. And all of a sudden, what happens now? Yitro came in order to neutralize the Hilul Hashem, in order to make a Kiddush Hashem, which is his kavanah was to say, look, I'm living on top of the world. I'm coming to join you, Jewish people. And therefore, don't listen to this crazy guy, Amalek. And therefore, he wanted all the Jewish people to come out to see that there's a goy who's successful, who graduated Harvard, who has intellect, who doesn't need anything in the world. And he came all the way from Midian in order to join the Jewish people. That he did in order to neutralize the negative Hilul Hashem that was caused by Amalek. So that's what it means when it says, what caused him to come? Kiryat Yamsuf u'melchemet Amalek. When he heard how Amalek watered down and diluted the whole event, he says, Bimkom sheyesh Hilul Hashem, the only way to rectify Hilul Hashem, you got to make a Kiddush Hashem. So Yitro said, I got to come and show them the religion is great. And a guy like me that doesn't need anything, I'm already good. I have everything I need to leave his luxurious place of Midian. So that's why he said, bring all the people out. Because to make a Kiddush Hashem, the Hilul Hashem was made in front of all Klal Yisrael. And in order to rectify the Hilul Hashem, the Kiddush Hashem has to be in front of all Klal Yisrael as well. That's why, if he would have went to Moshe privately in his tent, it's just between him and Moshe. They don't see it. So therefore he says, come out to greet. And now everybody comes out and says, what is this? Moshe was, look at this man over here. Who's this guy? This is Yitro, the famous Yitro. Yes, he was an advisor. He's a genius. He's a very, very fair. What is he doing? He came to join us. At that point over there, whatever Amalek tried to do to Bnei Israel, and that's why I explained, the one that makes Chilul Hashem gets erased. Amalek, erased. The one that makes Kiddush Hashem. If you were naming the parasha, this parasha, I wouldn't have named it Yitro. This is Matan Torah, by the way. This is called Parashat Asid the Berot. Yitro, you're right. He's in the beginning of the parasha. Now, I don't have a problem with Noah. Noah is the whole parasha. So you have to call him Noah. I don't have a problem with Parashat Pinehas. Okay, Pinehas, he's the tzaddik. He killed Zimri. He killed Bil'am. But you come along over Yitro. How does Yitro get the name? Which, in my opinion, it's bad marketing. If I'm trying to get people to come to shul on Shabbat and I need to sell the parasha, Victor, all day long you're selling, no? How am I going to sell that? So you're going to get up tonight, you're going to say to Botai, tomorrow's the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments. Ladies, come early, 10 Commandments. Oh, you tell them, tomorrow, Yitro. Yitro, the father of Moshe. Listen, if I could sell Yitro or 10 Commandments, what do you sell? You sell 10 Commandments. That's the sizzle. Instead, what happens? They call the parasha of Matan Torah Yitro, because Hashem's coming along to say, Yitro made a Kiddush Hashem. And the one that sanctifies Hashem's name, God publicizes them. You midah keneged midah. You publicize my name against what Amalek did, and therefore God says, forever. God says, forget about Matan Torah. We're going to call the parasha on your name, and you're going to become famous because, not that Yitro wants to become famous, but because, again, his kavanah. Where did I get this from? The Zohar HaKadosh, and I'm concluding with this. The Gemara said, the Zohar HaKadosh writes, Ata Yitro. Ata Yitro, Yitro came. Who was Yitro? Kumra illa'ah. Kumra, Kumar. Kumar meaning he's a priest. Illa'ah v'rabreva. He was a high-ranking priest, and he had big status. Rav memuna dechol ta'aban ahoranin. The way he explains that over here was, Sar Gadol, he was a prince, and memune al kol avodah zara achirot. And what did he do? Ve'odele lekucha berichu. He came publicly and said, Toyota Botai. And they came along and everybody's taking pictures over there. And you know who's rolling in their graves? Amalek. Amalek, whatever Amalek tried to undo, Yitro came along and brought it back to the original level. Ve'amar ataya da'ati ki gadol Adonai mikol ha'elohim. What a Kiddush Hashem. Keder istalek mityakar kuchabirichu mikareh. The kavod of God and the glory of Hashem was elevated. Ela betata, not only on the earth, the angels in the heavens. You don't know the Kiddush Hashem that was taking place. They said, look at this man. Ul batar. Now it says right after that, you have oraita. The Torah was able to be given to the Jewish people. Bishlimu the sultanu al kola. At a time where everybody recognized that Hashem is supreme. So therefore, that's the third interpretation. What caused him to come? He could have stayed home. No, he could have stayed. If he just would have heard Kiryat Yamsuf, he would have stayed home. Kiryat Yamsuf, very nice. It's a big inspiration. Big Kiddush Hashem. Kiddush Hashem, you don't need me. But once he heard Melchemet Amalek, he heard the Hilul Hashem that was done. And that's why nobody's converting. Nobody's converting. You know why? Because Amalek put the block. Yitro says, I'm coming to convert. And Yitro's conversion is the most notable, the most high-profile conversion ever in the history. And on purpose he did it. He could have done it privately in Moshe Rabbeinu's tent without anybody knowing it. But he says, once already Amalek made a public desecration, therefore, in order to rectify Hilul Hashem, we must make Kiddush Hashem. Stop.